Day 27. Welcome back to the returning viewers and a warm welcome to any new viewers that are joining this video. This is my 30-day challenge, so we're on day 27, and what I'm documenting is my life story in a high level despite doing the 27 days to get comfortable being in front of the camera, get comfortable in sharing my message, which is we need to be seen, heard, understood in a community tribe kind of way, and also to become braver, to face our fears, face the changes that we need to make in our lives in order for us to find purpose, meaning, and freedom and thrive in this human experience that we're all going through as a collective at this present time. So my name is Tanya, I'm 52 years old and I live on the east coast of Scotland, and the way forward on this channel is I'm going to create a 3 video per week. So on a Monday there'll be self-reflections from my self-development journey, things that I'm learning as I'm in the process of launching my online coaching and therapy business, and also on a Wednesday focusing on the tools, tips, hints and techniques that are going to be able to help you through my extensive training and years of experience of learning tools but maybe not necessarily putting them into place when I needed them. So there's lots of lessons that I've learned in order to be able to help people fast track their journey, because when the student is ready, the right teacher comes along, and I hope that I may be that teacher for you, even if it is just for one video or maybe for a number of them. And then on a Friday, there's going to be a little bit of a light relief entertainment and me retelling parts of my story, where there's been some travel, some fun experiences that I've sort of undertook, some major lessons that I've learned, probably sprinkled with a wee bit Tanya humour and perspective that can actually maybe lighten your day going into the weekend if you choose to watch the content as it's being released on a Monday, Wednesday and Friday. So where we left it yesterday was on day 26. I talked about the separation and that I was starting to use YouTube to educate myself and start finding the changes that I needed to make in my life to get me away from the suffering and pain that I was experiencing at that time. And that was simply because for years I suppressed my emotions. I sort of was overcritical, and that was exhausting because I felt that I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. And because of my unhealthy boundaries, I was not just carrying my own burdens, I was also carrying family, for some friends as well, and past trauma from generational kind of experiences that had happened. And not knowing any better, you just bear the kind of burden that you're sort of carrying, thinking that this is something that you need to endure. And through YouTube and sort of like reconnecting with my kind of teachers at that time, I was able to start things from a slightly different perspective, trying to introduce some kindness and compassion and self-care for myself, and starting to feel stronger in finding my own voice and figuring out what I enjoyed and what I no longer brought pleasure into my life and joy, and therefore I needed to either eliminate or to reduce the impact of them. So in 2021 and going into 2022, it was that kind of heavy overthinking, over criticizing, and starting to spill into my work environment. And then at the tail end of 2022, I ended up catching the coronavirus, COVID. And what happened, and this is where our mind is just so powerful, work was becoming extremely stressful and overwhelming, and I was debating with the idea, will I actually resign because it's just becoming too unbearable for me, and or will I continue to see the project through? Now, we had this dangling carrot that things were going to get delivered in February. Part of me was not convinced that was achievable at that moment in time. So this was about the November. And I was like, can I actually continue going for another 4 months, considering the stress that I'm actually experiencing? And I knew I was heading to a burnt out state. I knew I was exhausted, I was overwhelmed. And this is where the kind of work environment was that we had to attend in-person work 2 times a week. I had managed to negotiate that down to once a week because I just didn't see the value in me being personally in the office for 2 days, simply because when I was in the office, I was there firefighting questions and answers for people, but I wasn't actually getting any of the actual work that I needed to do, which in my opinion was where I was adding the biggest portion of value. So as a result, I had this kind of internal kind of debate within me. I didn't want to be in the office. I knew I was far more productive being at home, but in order to actually be seen to be complying with company policy, I was making the effort to go in once a week. And when everything was just sort of like piling up, then when I was sort of returning home on that kind of final Thursday in November, up until then I had been extremely cautious, and I was using hand sanitizer when I was coming off the bus. I was wearing a face mask to take all the kind of necessary precautions. But unfortunately, when I got off that bus that night, I didn't use the hand sanitizer, and walking between the bus stop and actually arriving at my flat, I ended up sort of like touching my face with my hands, and I picked up something on the bus. I didn't actually start feeling the symptoms until the Saturday. I was due to meet a friend on the Sunday. We were going to go to a Christmas market and do some fun activities there, but I just felt so poorly. And then she sort of prompted me, have you done a COVID test? And luckily I had some test kits, so I did that, and sure as fate, it came up positive straight away. So I did a second one to make sure that it wasn't a false positive, and the second one was positive as well, which then meant I had to actually, at that point you were quarantining if you actually had contracted the virus, which then meant that for the next 2 weeks I was actually not going to be able to go into the office. So it gave me that little bit of kind of time and space of not having to do that commute, and giving me a little bit more time to be productive at home. And then because we were wrapping up for the Christmas holidays, I ended up not going back into the office until January. So it gave me that kind of period of time. So my body made me susceptible to catching the coronavirus in order for me to have that space and time to do something that I actually was no longer enjoying, the commute into the office and not being productive, because I didn't feel that I was adding value. And this is where our kind of thoughts and our feelings then translate into the actions that were actually taken. And what had actually happened, I was sort of building up all this kind of shame and guilt and self-criticism towards myself, to the point of I always was like pushing the boundaries. I should be doing more, I should be achieving more. And over the Christmas kind of 2-week break that I had, I sort of came to the conclusion, look, I can walk away now and the project may or may not deliver with me being there or not, but then I would always have the regret, what if I had stayed another 2-3 months to see the project over the line? And then at least if I decided to go into another contract after that, I can actually give the kind of pros and cons of what I've learned through that whole kind of 3-year project experience, but I would actually not have been seen to have left something that hadn't completed. So that kind of loyalty and determination to actually see something to the conclusion sort of kept me staying in that contract. Now, the universe very kindly sort of managed to manifest the situation that the project did deliver in February and my contract was up for renewal in March. I genuinely did not want to renew, but at the same time, I didn't want to be the one saying I don't want to renew. So I was almost like, universe, please make it happen that I don't have to renew. And when they started looking at their budgets and they knew that the next part of the project wasn't going to be another 6 months, it was going to be another 18 months to maybe 3 years. They didn't have the finances in place to be able to retain me on my kind of current day rate, which worked out as an absolute bonus. So at the end of March, my contract came to a conclusion. So I knew I was absolutely exhausted and burnt out, and I needed time to sort of like take care of me, to really sort of take the time, recharge the batteries and figure out what I really wanted to do. Because I knew I could go and get another contract, but I would be repeating the same patterns, the same behaviours, and I still would be unfulfilled. And give it another 6 months, 12 months down the line, I still would be unhappy and unfulfilled. And this is where the universe sort of like brought Marisa Peer into my life. So as I had been watching a lot of the YouTube content, Steven Bartlett and his Diary of a CEO podcast, Marisa was a guest in April. And I watched that and I was like, oh wow, this absolutely sounds fascinating. Now I had seen a few adverts of Marisa talking about the Transformational Rapid Therapy course that she had launched and she was promoting, and I was like, is this just too good to be true, that people can actually make a career of it? So I sort of like dismissed that aspect of it, but seeing the podcast and hearing firsthand from her how powerful this modality is, my curiosity was actually sparked. So as I mentioned yesterday, or I think a few vlogs previously, I actually bought her book, I Am Enough, and it's just a small book, and I actually did all the exercises within that book. But the fundamental thing that I found in just like 2 days of doing the exercises and working things through is that where I was projecting this image of I'm confident, I'm resourceful, I can get on with, I can find solutions to any kind of problem, and I can constantly achieve and progress. Despite all the things that had happened in my life, I was able to reframe things and keep moving on, and on the surface appear to have a really kind of fulfilling and happy, content, full life. But inwards, this is where the self-criticism, the kind of negative thinking, and the shame that I was feeling with the kind of binge eating that I had been doing at different parts of my life, and not facing up to how I genuinely was feeling, that I was always putting this mask on, that everything's okay, because I didn't want to be complaining, I didn't want to be negative and sort of bringing the kind of mood down. I felt that I always needed to project this kind of air of positivity. And doing that exercises by reading that book, I became very, very clear that the underlying reason for that was my fear of being rejected, and that then I wouldn't belong. And in feeling those feelings, I suppressed what I was actually feeling. And what I then did was I just then reframed and just sort of like tried to sort of like put it into that positive kind of mindset. So seeing that podcast, reading the book, I was just like, now I need more. So I sort of found Marisa's YouTube channel and her website, and I signed up for a webinar where they were going to discuss a little bit more about the contents of the course, because there was the online element, and then there was the live event that they were sort of promoting as well. So what I'm going to do in the vlog tomorrow is I'll go into more details of the actual course and everything that I sort of like went through, the kind of high level transformations that I went through as part of me joining the RTT school in April. And it was because one of the kind of channels that I had been watching on YouTube was a tarot and astrology channel. What the vlogger was actually commenting was that the 11th of April 2023 was supposed to be the most auspicious day of the year, and not following astrology from a purist kind of perspective, but just having a natural kind of curiosity in the subject, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And funnily enough, on the 11th of April, that is when I had my one-to-one call, and then I signed up to do the actual course. So for me, that genuinely was the luckiest day of the year, because even though I had found Marisa a couple of weeks previously and sort of submerged myself in some of her content, that is when I made the decision, I'm going all in. I am actually committed to actually finding the root cause of why I keep repeating the same patterns of behavior, even though I know I've got tools, techniques and materials that I've actually either gone in immersive courses with Mindstore, with Tony Robbins, and all the books that I had sort of read, and lots of other courses that I had done in between. Why was I not putting all those courses and all that knowledge that I had into practice? And this is where one of the kind of rules of the mind is that when you've got logic and you've got emotion, emotion always wins. And emotion is all stored in your subconscious mind. So therefore, I needed to tackle my subconscious mind in order to figure out what were the triggers for me constantly going back into this kind of the limiting beliefs that I had actually created, that I was blind to, I wasn't even aware of that I had them. And doing that inner work, that is what then has transformed my life as a result of the kind of 2023 journey that I went on, and that enabled me to then set up my online business earlier this year. So that's what we're going to cover off in the next couple of video vlogs. So for those of you that have stuck around, thank you very much. If you want to follow more of the remaining few days of my journey, and then the new content that will be coming in another kind of week's time, please hit the subscribe button. And remember, go out and seize the day. Have an awesome day. And never forget, there's always choices in life, so choose wisely. Until tomorrow, bye.